two sets of things. Around the dinner table, one thing, and around the seminar table, another thing. So, an Iranian, a Turk, and an Arab chat around dinner. What I hear is a lot of cynicism, sarcasm, black humor, despair, nihilism, and perhaps in moments of enlightenment, some perspectives of change or hope. This is the dinner. When we meet here, if I look at your papers, and remember, we did not call for papers on specific topics. We said, you guys, we know you, we respect our work. You have worked on intellectual history in Iran, in Turkey, in the Arab region, and sometimes in comparative work. What do you have to offer us? Please come to Doha and share with us some of your research notes. So, Zainab talked about the change of alphabet. Frank, you spoke about the definition of Arab as an area of study from an anthropological point of view. Jihan, you spoke about archives and different kinds of archives. Yael spoke about racism of different sorts in Turkish society. Fatmi, you spoke about nostalgia, the kinds of alternative views that Iranians are entertaining these days. Mitri, you spoke about contextual Palestinian theology. Omar, you spoke about Quranic studies, different kinds, different currents of Quranic studies. Jamil, ideas of civilization. Firat on different definitions of humanism. Katayun, you spoke about mainstreaming feminism as this new phenomenon that is happening in Iran and perhaps, I think, in other parts also in Turkey and definitely in the Arab region. Hoda spoke about the exclusion of women in the writing of Arab history, and she and the institution she co-founded, the Women and Memory Forum in Egypt, have been really making up for that. Hussein, you spoke about internal and external imperialism. Zainab, you spoke about the historical roots of Ottoman, even starting with Ottoman demands for women rights or issues. And Pamela spoke about the component of art the importance of paying attention to art, especially not that standard form of art we know in museums, while writing on intellectual history. So, this is what I heard from you. I open the floor now to all of you and to see how you would what you would like to add to this, how you would like to elaborate perhaps some things time did not allow you to do it. فتفضلوا. فرانك، جيهان مش أنت كنت بدك تحكي كمان؟ Yalla, we will give her priority because she has been suppressed so often.
No, actually, I had a question about internal imperialism. Why don't you use internal colonialism? Because it's colonization. If we take the definition of colonialism, as Fanon said, coloniser les esprits, colonization the spirits, the minds, the culture, replacing, and you were talking about indigenous. So why internal imperialism? Why not internal colonization?
The thing is that it's been used, internal colonialism, but the thing is that because Iran has never been colonized officially, so the idea of colonization is not part of the literature that we have. The main focus will be on imperialism, mainly. But again, as I mentioned, some scholars, they already use the term internal colonialism. استعمار داخلی. It's exactly the same as استكبار داخلي, the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I didn't have the time to elaborate on a very important point that I just address a little bit in my paper is the fact that many of the authors or anthropologists that I quote in my talk were speaking of anthropology of the Middle East, which means Arab region, Iran and Turkey mostly, and even Afghanistan also. But I mean mostly Turkey, Iran and Arab region. It means that in the mind of many of these researchers also, this region doesn't go beyond the Arab region, and the one who was working on Turkey, Iran and Arab region share the same paradigms of research. Enfin, some of them, not all, for sure. So I think that it could be interesting also to investigate this question of Middle East studies as a cultural area, as a regional studies that bring together, but from outside. That bring together from outside the three regions, which is very interesting because now we are speaking about a dialogue between intellectuals from all these regions, but at the same time this dialogue has been launched many years ago through the kind of through the invention of a category, which is the one of Middle East, which is imposed from outside. Yes. So it's a forced dialogue which has been imposed from outside, in a sense.
Yes, I think Hussein pointed to something important, but used the term imperialism. I would say it's also a strategy in Turkey of political Islam. Of course, it takes different forms in different places. There are different political Islams, but their strategy is to say that they're autochthonous, they're real, they're essential, they're authentic, and you're alien, you're external, you don't belong here. So, this strategy is a strategy of exclusion of the person and just dismissing what they're saying. And even the history that I was trying to lay out here was dismissed. Oh, feminism is something that comes from outside. No, we have 150 years of history. No, you're external. You're alien. I'm not going to listen to you. And this is, of course, very problematic. In fact, it's a fascistic strategy.
And we can add, you are considered as the perturbator of the order, so you are the enemy within. And with this categorization, actually, if we go back to what we heard those 2 days, mostly it's the fringe, the margins, the others, that were speaking out here, thanks to this to those 2 days of round tables, and as seen by the actual regimes in Turkey or in Iran or in other autocratic Arab regimes. So yes, maybe this is a common thing in those three areas or build-up area of the Middle East, like you say, Frank, Middle Eastern studies or Middle East area. But we are looking at the fringe, at the margins, at the ones who are also questioning politics and the power.
Well, maybe I frame my comments based on my experience last year. This time, I was teaching a course on global intellectual history with all the activist students in the encampment. And then my colleague, Lloyd Kramer, was teaching European intellectual history. And we will see each other, but there are also students taking both classes. And I will always tell Lloyd, is like, your job is so easy. It's a boring team of people. Right, that Kant, Marx, Hegel, Foucault. I said, I have to cover everything you do, plus idea of civilization and the mobilized humanism of Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. And it gets much more complicated because I have to deal with the crisis of enlightenment and modernity, but in a very different language. And I think this is what we are doing here, right? We start Turkish, Iranian, and Arab intellectuals starting from the 19th century. It is clearly that there are foundational thinkers of Nahda in both three places, and they share this humanist commitments to equality, justice, freedom. Then we take these ideas over a long durée, and it goes in so many different directions and much more, with achievements, but as well as disillusionments. And then it makes the task more difficult, but it is necessary not only in terms of scholarship, but it's necessary for publics because we are living in an age of renewed sense of civilizationalism and clash of civilization. And one of the most deceptive languages that actually hides these search for universal values and search for freedom and justice and equality. And that kind of historicization is necessary. So I do think that we should keep this project continuing. As a short side note is that I had difficulty reaching to some students in the class, how global intellectual history work. But then I realized that they're watching the movie Dune. And I say, look, some of you will understand if you watch that movie. In Dune, the last one, the recent one, I say, we are doing the intellectual history of the natives who speak Arabic language, all right? And then, of course, in the show, it seems like these natives are indigenous people. I say, but these natives are more enlightened than all the imperialists. And they actually, in Arabic, you don't know what they're talking. And in fact, they are talking the language of enlightenment in Arabic against imperialism. And I mean, this is the kind of problem that we are dealing with the global academia too, right? That we are, with Orientalism, marginalized, even though we are talking about all the main problems of the world order and modernity. And those intellectuals we work on actually try to understand and try to shape it. So our task is more difficult, but that's all the reason why we should cooperate to achieve it. Thank you.
I really love your dinner table description because in my opinion, you're totally right. We have so much in common, but we never come together to speak about all these things. We don't know about each other. So this is why, thank you very much again for hosting this conference, because it's granted very much insightful talks to just everybody being able to know about what the neighbor is doing. And we should definitely continue that. And in connection with this, Jamil, I would say that I don't want to care too much about the global. You know, the whites can worry about their own issues. I have enough problems of my own. I don't have time to deal with that. So I thought, let us come together, eat, drink, sit, spend some time together, and not through the white guy, you know. But I know, I mean, I'm just being nasty here. But the other concern is not concern. The reason why I thought we would brainstorm together is that I truly think this is the start of a conversation. This is perhaps one of the rare times we come together to speak about Turkish, Iranian, and Arab issues and forget about what the Germans are thinking or what the Belgians are thinking. So how do you think we could develop this? Yani, next time we meet, what do you think, what would be a fruitful way of organizing the next encounter? Should we go for a specific topic? Should we meet, I don't know, in Honolulu perhaps? Omar.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elizabeth, for organizing this conference. I just want to note that I believe that when we talk about like Iranians, Turks, and Arab world, we don't mean it by as nationalist. So Kurds and Amazigh, we mean it as an intellectual sphere. So we shouldn't forget that. I'm really excited for this start, but I think next time maybe we should focus on like having two tracks, one that focus on understanding our societies better, and other ones that are more focused and that have more space for discussion about comparison. Maybe if we can like make a plan for conferences that like takes these two tracks, it might be a good form. I don't know.
Once a year, say one of these.
No. For example, it can be a topic. 3 speakers, each one talks about, like, give us a better understanding about the situation in their country. But the discussions about comparison would be, like, separated so we can have, like, more time for deliberation.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, regarding your first comment, I wasn't with you yesterday over dinner, but I guess you didn't have enough or maybe no alcohol at all. Otherwise, I mean, this is easy to solve. I mean, you know, so this is no problem. Okay?
But then there was no Palestinian with us. That would have increased the degree of despair.
Okay, but this is just on the side. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was really very interesting to hear about the context in Turkey and in Iran. And to meet people, I mean, face to face, which is really, and not just reading about people. Maybe for the future, one idea could be, how are these intellectual ideas connect to the power struggle that is currently in the region? You know, with different ambitions in Iran, in Turkey, in other countries, and what is the role of an intellectual in this era, where the region is struggling with itself, but also I think the idea with the whole notion of the Middle East, that was, I mean, it shows that we have an identity issue, because Middle East is a term from the 19th century, colonial, etc. So what would be a common identity that intellectuals were trying to look for? Is there something that connects the region, that we can find, you know, a term that would, okay, the Ottoman Empire is gone, but what would be something that intellectuals have been looking for? I'm not sure if I made myself clear, but it's power and identity, basically.
But Mitri, you said two things. The second thing about identity, I'm not that excited about. You know, whether what is connects Iran to Turkey to, who cares, you know? We all suffer from very similar things. Yeah? Why not take this mu'anat as the bond? I mean, reasons for talking to one another. We don't need to have an identity that bonds us, but our concerns are similar, or they could lead to fruitful conclusions. You know, that for me is enough, and that is more. I'm not really looking, shuf, what can we construct? Who cares? I don't want to construct anything. We have enough disasters on our hands, enough topics to deal with.
But you answered it already, because suffering could be an identification element. I mean, in Palestine, suffering is the identification element. So I mean, you know, already you
it's-
are answering it. Yeah. So.
And you know, it's مش يعني suffering. We suffer from autocracy. We suffer from repression, oppression. We suffer from injustice. We suffer from external intervention. يعني so many elements that can bring us together to pursue perhaps forms of the suffering in Palestine are different, from, I'm sure, from the ones in Iran. But no, we can talk to one another. But then the other idea, you said, let us try to make connections between the power struggles that are going on in the region and what? Intellectual history writing? مثل شو مثلا? What do you have in mind?
I'm not sure, but again, as contextual theologian, I always need to look at the power struggle. I mean, and we already heard about many power struggle. I mean, you know, the women issue is definitely about a power struggle. So, I mean, just we need to, I think, maybe analyze the context, the current context a bit more, to see what role do we have today. What can we do? Because I always, you know, I'm a historian, but still I need to do something. Basically looking forward. I mean.
And you know, your point helps me perhaps to articulate what for me is significant, is this business that we don't write intellectual history, just take it. No. I think the kind of intellectual history we write, masalan, that we write it by having a comparative framework, is one way of writing history. And we write it for what? For what purpose and how and with whom? These are legitimate and perhaps important questions to raise as well. Jihan.
Actually, there is two issues here that bring us together. The first one is a gender issue, and in Turkey, and Fatima talked about yesterday, maybe doing something about it on the 3 zones. And there is undoubtedly the question of Palestine. How we deal with the question of Palestine in Iran, in Turkey, in the Arab world, in each context. And how also the question of Palestine could be recuperated as a tool of power in order to détourner, what's détourner in English? To shift the look on other things than internal conflicts or internal battles. So the question of Palestine, I think, is a common subject.
Thank you, Jihan. We bring in Pamela. Pamela, تفضلي.
Hi,
Hi.
Sorry for...
Pamela, first of all, we appreciate how early you got up to be with us.
Yeah, no, it's
So
been
go
really,
ahead.
really...
Thank you.
Susan, you mentioned something about, trying to bring together the 3 regions, the Arab world, Turkey, and Iran, without considering perhaps, or without worrying too much about, the Western intellectual history and so on and so forth. But I think there is a problem there, and that's that a lot of contemporary issues in these regions are informed or mediated by what has happened in the West since the 20th century. So, for example, when you examine the kind of artistic interventions that I talk about in my books, it's inevitable. You have to connect it to the Shiraz Festival of the Arts and the fact that a lot of these important figures, artistic figures, were invited to Iran, and that they influenced the art scenes in a very, very interesting way. or that a lot of Iranians in their art education in the university actually studied the books that were published by the professors at the Bauhaus. And Bauhaus is a school of art and design, which was created in Germany in the 1917. And this school actually focuses on abstraction and the significance of the body, the centrality of performance and the body in art and design. And so I have, for example, in my book, talked about how this system of education, which was invented in Germany, actually has long influenced artistic practices in Iran, and particularly because since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, the government did not, they didn't look favorably at different kind of art history. For example, art history or art practices that are informed by social issues, by political issues, by feminist movement. And therefore, abstraction was a very, very good idea for them to promote in schools. And so Iranians actually turned abstraction on its head, actually turned something which was considered completely apolitical into a political tool against the government. And so I think so without understanding the importance of that system of the German system of education in Iranian art schools, I think it's impossible to interpret what's going on in Iran. And unfortunately, it continues. This trend continues. Iranians turn to Michel Foucault, for example, in order to talk about spatial control and surveillance, as opposed to turning to a Turkish counterpart or an Arab counterpart who might have analyzed these issues from the perspective of what's going on the ground in the Arab world and in Turkey. And so I wonder, what can we do about this? Like, what is the solution here? We are not relying on each other's intellectual discoveries and interventions, but rather we are constantly turning to the West. And this Western influence has been there for a long, long time. It is only recently, I have to say, that in the context of Iran, for example, people are turning to a mode of writing, like in Safavid historiography, where the description of a space or the city was expressed through a genre of poetry called Shahrashu. So, Iranians in the past 30, 50 years have not studied Shahrashu, but they have studied the Bauhaus. So their knowledge is mediated by the West inevitably. So I'm just putting that as a question, as a dilemma that we are facing in both the scholarship as well as the practice that is going on in these countries. Thank you.
I fully agree, and you are part of this conference because I think that intellectual history cannot be limited to books that thinkers write in an analytic form. What you work on is also in these options of writing intellectual history, one can include the visual or not. And I would rather include them, and in this inclusivity, of course, to raise the question to what extent there is any lateral conversation in art making and art history writing between Iran, Turkey, and the Arab region. What do we know about modern and contemporary Iranian art? Nothing. What do we know about Turkish contemporary and modern art? And, I think this is also a very interesting field to explore. Sylvia Neff, who was to participate in this last session, was to speak on Arab art, and unfortunately she couldn't make it, but it is definitely, I think, one of the lines I would like to pursue. Zainab, you wanted to...
Yes.
Thank you.
I want to go back to this idea that suffering brings us together. In fact, we can reformulate it in terms of freedom, and I'm inspired by existentialism here. One cannot be free if all are not free. So basically your freedom, you can't be free by yourself. So if others, like other people in your region are not free, your freedom is not real, and probably you'll lose it. You might lose it as well. So basically, to struggle for the sake of others' freedom is an important ethical goal, and also a political goal, and it requires constant engagement. So although we problematize our own oppression, and that's valuable because you come from your own experience and kind of unfold structures and the system that underlies it, we also learn from each other's lived experiences and histories, and they kind of intertwine and give rise to new possibilities, I think. And that's how I would like to approach this issue. So these encounters are important because we are relational beings, not because we have a common history or we have some common properties. That's not what is common, but we are relational as human beings sharing this world, basically. That's how I see it.
And perhaps, Zainab, this would be a form of alternative universalism.
Yes.
By getting us out of our little ethnic and national identities, really to be concerned with issues of freedom, for instance, across borders. Perhaps that is the alternative universalism to the ones we've known from the whites, white domination.
That's true.
I don't know.
I mean-
Fatmi, I feel you have something to say.
Yeah, I was waiting for the same because raised.
And Mitri also wants to speak. So how do we sort this out?
Go ahead. No, please. Okay. Is that okay with you? First of all, I want to thank you.
Thanks. I want to thank you, Elizabeth, for organizing this conference, which I think is a very tough job to do. Thank you so much, and thank you for the hospitality.
By the way, thank you for giving me the occasion to thank two guys here, two unknown soldiers. Omar al-Magharibi, where is Omar? He's hiding somewhere.
Yeah.
And Kamal al-Tayrashi, who were really working in the background. There he is, Kamal. And I think without them I would have panicked. But Tabayyun, Raja and Rashid are here. They really offered the infrastructure, so they made it very easy for me to organize all of this. So thank you, Tabayyun. Yeah, Fatmi.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, exactly. I wanted to thank the organizers for this wonderful session, and I have to say that I really enjoyed it beyond conversations. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the weather and generous hospitality and all that. So thank you so much. Apart from that, I have to say I learned a lot from each presentation, and thank you for that. That is something that we really need. Like exactly, like we don't have enough opportunity to learn from each other. What is going on in Turkey, what is going on in the Arab world, what is going on in Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and what is going on in Iran. So we learn, I think the first thing was for me, was learning from each other. And that actually, for me, was that I could see things from another perspective, because we are locked within our own perspective. Like we used to see things from the Iranian perspective, for instance. Although there is no such a thing as one Iranian perspective, but you just see the whole region from our point of view. The clubs of, let's say, Saudi and Iran on the one hand, and then Qatar and Turkey on the other hand, or Egypt or other parts of the region. So these are the clubs that I'm talking about. So the intellectual history allows us to, or intellectual mutual understanding allows us to go beyond that clubs and see things in a critical mode, and also it enables us to
mutual understand each other beyond those clubs, beyond those power interests and concerns. And I think that is something that I think that would, it actually, these kind of conferences would make it possible. So, and I think that mutual understanding is also absolutely necessary for decolonized kind of knowledge that we are talking about, because look, without mutual understanding, there can't be, like, we all, even in this conference, the language that is that we use all the time, most of the time, is English. So this is a, let's say this is a colonial language. Although some of us know Arabic, and some of us know Persian, and Turkish, but the main language was, to be honest, is English. So I think for decolonizing knowledge, we exactly need to understand our languages and speak our languages, not, necessarily the languages that we, like our mother tongue, but the language of understanding and mutual understanding. I think that that's the necessary step to create a decolonized knowledge that we are talking about.
And I would add something. It's not because only we don't know about each other. I think the weight of disasters we live in is so heavy. It's not that we happen not to know. I think we are so absorbed by each one of the sets of disasters we live in. We don't have the mental and the affect. I think there is a heavy charge of affect in all of this. I mean, the suffering is suffering. So it's not that we're stretching our legs and we're doing well and let's have a symposium. And the other thing is that because we are not aware of what is happening in terms of intellectual history in Iran, we do not know the articulation of the suffering. Yani we think there is only suffering. Haram, the Iranians also have bad circumstances. But we don't know that despite that, or because of that, there is fantastic reflection that is going on these issues, which would help us. Yani, instead of being stuck alone with our disasters, it's nice to see how the disasters of the neighbors and how they are doing intellectual work with it, not just suffering.
Absolutely.
So who speaks now, Mitri or Hussein?
I've got two quick questions. Elizabeth, thank you so very much. I have to repeat, again, what others says. Do we have any plan to go beyond intellectual history to talk about a sort of normative discussion? What should we do? So we know about the problems, we know about the issues. So now the next stage is, okay, let's go with some proposal here. That's what we need to do as sort of a kind of normative proposal.
You mean political action?
Not action, just in terms of, again, what do we do with the problems that now we've got some understanding with?
On what level? Intellectual?
Individual even. Should have a kind of a project about writing about these? I'm just thinking loudly just right now. Should we have a shared, as you mentioned, it might be even social kind of project. So on that note, the second question is about publication. Do you have any intention to publish the papers that we discussed?
Wallahi, the Tabayyun editing team, we did think, but because we didn't know what we're going to get, and whether the different valuable papers you presented cohere into something that can serve as a publication or not. I think, Raja, do you want to say something about this?
Yeah, I don't know if it's immediately related. Yeah. What I have in mind, what I would like to say, I don't know if it's immediately related to what you were just talking about now. But as you people talked, the same thought kept recurring in my mind. It begins with a comparison that I made in my welcoming words. Why is it? Here's my question. Why is it that there is no very serious problem when it comes to dialogue, cultural contact, interaction between Western countries, so that the people don't feel that they don't know each other or that they are isolated? Whereas here we seem to have a problem not only at the level of contacts between neighboring countries, but even within the Arab region itself. Often we say, okay, we people in the east of the Arab world, in the eastern part of the Arab world, don't really know much of, they don't have much contact. There are some Arab thinkers who complained about a break between the eastern part of the Arab world and the western, North African, essentially, part of the world. So why is it like this with us, and it's not like this in Western countries? And the answer is really very obvious. In Western countries, you have open borders. You have normal relations between the two different countries, and you have also the major unseen or seldom noticed by us factor, the material and economic market factor, which brings people together, and following the economic market follows, I mean, that comes before and is followed by an intellectual market of ideas that we don't have because our borders are closed, because we don't really have the material base that will bring us together. And so this is the challenge that we have. I don't know, I haven't counted how many people were able to come directly from Iran to here, or how many people from Turkey were able to come to, and if this conference was to be held in Turkey, a similar conference was to be held in Turkey or in Iran, how many people from the Arab world would be able to go there? And what does that tell us? I mean, at some point, one might think that really, unless the people come from Iran or from Turkey or from Egypt directly and speak to us, then this is not genuine enough, you know, because the people, those of us who live in Western countries, of course, we are still Turks and Iranians and Arabs, but, well, we have been affected, our outlook has been colored in different ways, and to some extent we may not be really a true reflection of what is going on in the countries that we once lived in, or the countries where we were raised. So this is something this is a burden that we have to live with, and it's not really in our hands. So what I want to say in sum is that ability to communicate and the existence or non-existence of a market of ideas is a historical process. It is not something that happens overnight, and it's not really subject to the goodwill or will of individuals who live at a certain particular moment, as we all are. So, but one has to admit that what Elizabeth succeeded in doing is something really remarkable, and she ought to be thanked for it. And from the beginning, I thought it was really an original idea. Nothing like this has been tried in our era for a long time, and regardless of whatever limitations we can think of, as I have just tried to do, it's a good step, and maybe it will be followed by other steps.
And we should admit that this was possible thanks to the Arab Center. I mean, really, not مجاملة الآن, because of Doha. يعني, where else can we go? And we're all, I think most of us here, Arabs, are sort of refugees, if not politically, but professionally. We find ourselves in this space where there is still possibility for doing this. But you're absolutely right that the real conditions of dialogue and sharing is really not to our favor. That's true. Mitri, thank you for waiting.
No, yeah, I think just a quick note, I think indeed freedom is something that brings us all together. And I would add also suffering, but also I would add hope. Because I think this is what is missing right now in our region is a kind of a theology of hope, but not a cheap hope that tomorrow is going to be better. But actually, I wanted to ask exactly Hussein's question in terms, is a publication envisioned? What kind of publication? So that at least we know what is expected from us next. I mean.
So I think this is a question to all of us, but this gentleman here, تفضل, wants to speak.
Can I speak Arabic or Persian? Good. أنا خليل محفوظ مرشح دكتوراه في جامعة تربية مدرس بطهران.
يا هلا.
Tehran, a PhD candidate, political sciences and international relations. I think, first of all, I thank Tabayyun and Professor Elizabeth because this is very important and it's a step in the right direction. And at the same center invited Sadiq Zeba Kalam, a well-known Iranian intellectual who was invited. This is important to break the ice. I think the divine intervention and geography wanted Iran and the Arab world to be neighbors, so there is no need for any breakage between the two sides. But I expected this theme to be philosophical. I expected a deeper discussion. For example, in Iran, I did not hear about Mullah Sadra. I think his philosophy rules Iran, Abdul Karim, Soros, and his trend. I didn't attend all the sessions. What I want to say, I want to thank you, first of all. I think it's important for us and important for many who look for conversion between the peoples. We really need to be more open. We need to break the ice. We should stop looking inward. We try to be more open to the others. In Iran, there are many trends, the Sadris, the Poppers, the followers called Popper, the nationalist followers of Karmani, who want to give up everything which is Islamic and go back to Zoroastrian tradition. This is a step in the right direction. I hope there will be similar conferences held in Iran and Turkey. Thank you. Thank you. Raja. السؤال مطروح.
A publication. Or would you say, Wallahi, let us wait for the next round? What do you say, Jamil?
We always publish, so it's fine. Maybe we can wait a little bit more. But I wanted to comment on one thing, to second Jihan's point about how suffering in Palestine and the question of gender justice are related and how it unites us. And I want to note, in addition to freedom, suffering, and the point about the hope, that what unites us is this search for justice and equality that actually characterized Arab Enlightenment, Nahda, in earlier times, and we are kind of inheriting that. And what makes our group having some sort of a cohesion is that globally, there's no global. I will say that in Europe, for example, there is a sort of sense of shock when they see Holocaust. Right, there's always philosophical reflections. I think whole post-World War II European intellectual history relies on dealing with how to explain Nazi Germany and Holocaust. And Amy César's reminder that, well, this was happening to us in Africa. Where were you? Right, that's the famous Amy César book. And we have our Edward Said, I think Edward Said's Orientalism and Edward Said's writings on Palestine, we basically have that same humanist intervention saying that this has been happening to Palestinians. And I cannot comprehend, I mean, I live in America, like what's happening to people that they have no empathy for the suffering of the people. And so the three countries or the general publics we are dealing with have closer empathy to the question of justice in Palestine. And that could have been in East Asia, where some events in East Asia, Opium War, is actually means more to them than us or in other places. But that leads me to one of the other goals of this kind of project is that we are dealing with the legacy of a reformulated Enlightenment humanism in the language of Arabic and Islam that we still inherit. With the sensibility of feminist gender justice, I think we are also dealing with the big picture and the various manifestations of this. I really think that the feminist methodology is what we really need to see the question of justice and equality, not only in Palestine and internationally, but also everywhere and domestically. And in that context, I will end with this anecdote that I find important as a reminder, is that there is a very powerful letter written from Frantz Fanon to Ali Shariati about Ali Shariati's project of Islamic humanism. It turns out that Ali Shariati wrote this to himself, that we don't have any record in Frantz Fanon, but it's still a very smart letter. I think Shariati was trying to get a legitimacy to his idea of Islamic humanism. And there Fanon says, Ali, I really admire your project. I think that's what we need. The Western humanism failed. And he says, just be careful, though. Once you open the door of a religious text as a basis of humanism, it can be hijacked, right? And I think in some ways, when Ali Shariati wrote this in early 60s, it actually already happened, right? So we are dealing with the late 19th century Enlightenment describing a project of humanism in the language of religion and Arabic, which then have all kind of other problems we are dealing with. But I think that also, this question of that Ali Shariati, describing humanism and enlightenment and search for justice in the language of Arabic and Islam is still shared by these three countries in various manifestations. So it gives us a good cohesion, and then it is very much needed in terms of the intervention we can make. Thank you.
And what is your thought about the publication?
I don't need to publish anything as a full professor. So I can wait for a better publication, but we can have a publication
apart
in the future.
Apart from needing to publish, do you think this round we went through in these 2 days, do you think that there is here the nucleus of a publication, or would you say, let's wait and see, or what is your opinion?
I will say that we began to get to know each other and a certain number of teams emerging. So a second meeting round will actually make the publication stronger in terms of a cohesive team and its impact. So I might suggest another meeting.
Jihan?
Yeah, I would say that my communication around archiving was one only communication on archiving. It's external to lots of things that were debated here. So maybe my publication, my intervention won't be published because there is no coherent panel that can fit in. But what can we say is that the gender issue was brought up by four or five communication, and this can be maybe an issue for a varia or something that can be added in Tabayun journal in a larger study.
What if we agreed, let me make this proposition, that when we go home tomorrow, we sort of share with each other a proposal that in light of these 2 days of sharing, Zainab or Jihan would like to write on this or that topic towards a common publication or make proposals for a publication, and see perhaps in light of those proposals we could organize another conference. I don't know who will, I'll have to look for other supporters, but you see my point that perhaps in light of what we heard in these 2 days, ما بعرف شو رأيكم؟ Raja, from what you heard during these 2 days, would your journal think that is material for a special issue, or you would rather think further and invite our guests to formulate proposals for a special issue? شو رأيك؟
Simply to speak a little about the Tabayyun policy when it comes to these symposia and the subsequent publications that are hoped for or expected. Yeah, it has been our custom actually to publish a special issue after a symposium. We have certain criteria by which we judge how much the material is in line with the basic interests and concerns of Tabayyun in social, political, and other related subjects in so-called practical philosophy. We hope that at some point we will get to read copies of your papers or lengthy abstracts of them and see what kind of unity there exists to sustain a special issue. But if you don't mind me being kind of a little bit assertive at this point, without necessarily meaning that this is what has to happen, but definitely the more that a paper cuts across geographical and cultural boundaries and goes for a comparative perspective between the different regions, the more this kind of makes it theoretical and moves it away from the local or the particular. Our interest in Tabayyun, I mean, they tend towards the kind of general, theoretical, explanatory, exploratory, whereas other journals published by the Markaz, yeah, they tend to be kind of
more concrete.
Many of them tend to be empirical
kind of research
oriented, and they can deal with this country and not be answered with the question, why focus on this country? Because this is what I want to do. But okay, so the more there is a theoretical dimension in the treatment, the more it is at home with Tabayyun. Now, it is possible, as you think about the papers that you have been working on, it may be possible to inject a theoretical general dimension in them without without this being obtrusive or forced. It may be possible. And of course, you keep in mind that as it's not a secret, I think, that negotiations are underway with Brill,
yeah,
I think, to publish many or all the papers. And certainly in Tabayyun, we look forward to the opportunity of being able to take away something important from this symposium.
Yeah. طيب, you've heard the editor-in-chief,
Yeah.
and we've heard each other. I think it would be a good thing, helpful, I think, if each one of you would write to us and say, this is your thought about a publication. And we take it from there. I'll sit down with Raja and Rashid and put this together and think. تفضل محمد.
أول شيء شكرا جزيلا.
آخر كلمة لك.
شكرا جزيلا. الفكرة إنه هي الندوة تعتبر بمثابة
that this symposium should be considered as a beginning, that we met each other and we listened to each other. Maybe we can propose for the future that in these countries, the critique and intellectual debates in contemporary Iran, Turkey, and the Arab world, or three regions. My proposals for the next meeting or next year to focus on the field of philosophy. Then this can be in line with Tabayyun's direction because it's concerned with philosophy. And I have been involved with Turkish academia for 10 years. The Turkish academia's knowledge of Arab thinkers or Arab philosophers is very little, at the minimum. And those who are known, they know those who read English or got to know about them through English translations. Maybe for the next if the meeting is on intellectual debate and especially philosophy, and to get to know philosophy in the contemporary Iran, Turkey, and the Arab world. Thank you. In the view of this, then we can
and nihilism this evening. So we meet again in the evening, and thank you very much.
Yeah, okay.